Alright, we'll start simple. So, I assume you all know that I will be yapping about CLs, my favorite hole, for an hour, because I have been oh so graciously granted a whole hour to talk about them. So yeah, CLs, specifically gun CLs, will be what I'm covering. And I'm not covering missile CLs because that's an entirely different kind of playstyle. So, if we look at a gun CL fleet, right, we have to ask, what does a gun CL fleet do? And to address that question, we have to know what its capabilities are. So if you look at TF Birch, best starter fleet in my completely unbiased opinion, we can notice there's a lot of stats here, but the couple important ones to know are, first of all, speed. Light cruisers are very fast. The large radar small whiplash drive setup can get you up to 46 meters a second, or rather 47 meters a second, on flank speed. Which is, for a medium ship, like, that's very, very fast. You can catch up to most things, you can get around the map. It means that you'll be doing a lot of maneuvering in this hole, positioning yourself in advantageous positions. The next thing to notice is the small profile of the hull from the front. If you compare the ship to, let's say, an Axford, compared to an Axford and compared to a destroyer, you can notice that the CL has rather narrow front profile. And what this lets us do is two things. First, a small narrow profile in the front means a lower radar signature, means that we can hide better under jamming. And the second part is that that's less surface area to be hit, which means we have an easier time dodging. Finally, we can look at the weapons that we can bring. The biggest guns we can bring are the Mark 64 250mm cannon. And these are some of the most useful guns that ANS can field, in my opinion, or rather the caliber, because the caliber is just big enough to punch up into liners, side-on Ocellos, monitors with armor-piercing rounds. It can effectively hurt anything that OSB can bring, while still having the RPF round that completely shreds cappers, and any planes that get a little too close. So with these three capabilities in mind, speed, this this caliber that can effectively hurt any ship, and our narrow profile. Oh, I should also mention, in NEP, there's a general rule that the smaller the caliber, the higher DPM, and this applies also to the relationship between 450s and 250mm cannons. The Mark 64 450mm cannon, that 250mm cannon, can butt out a large amount of DPS. These things basically spew out DPS at the cost of being very soft, basically glass cannons. But yeah, I digress. So, we have speed.
Actually, if I can jump in there as well, I don't know if many people know this, but the lower the caliber of the weapon, the higher the DPS is, generally speaking, the way Nebulous works. So your 120mm and your 100mm have the highest damage potential of all weapons in the game. It's just their penetration suck. So anything with any resemblance of armor cannot generally be hurt by them very badly. I used to be a huge fan of running these Vauxhalls with the Mark 62 with the 21mm turrets.
You do get higher DPS.
Absolutely loved it. Yeah, absolutely loved it. And then the monitor got buffed and became good, and the fleet sucked from then on because the monitors you ran into completely shut you down.
That's why I like T50 so much, because they have enough armor pen to really just deal with anything while being small enough to be that kind of middle damage dealing caliber.
Yeah, exactly. And it's why you're saying like the Mark 64 can punch up, which is why it's almost the only choice for the Vauxhall at this point.
I've seen some strange builds, like, for example, 4CL with the 120mm, but I digress. to
Yeah.
to focus on where was I actually? Right, I was talking about with these three attributes: speed, firepower, and our small frontal profile, allowing us to jam and dodge. CLs are very suitable for what I would consider essentially a support fleet, but one that fights on the front. And I would call this a skirmisher or a cavalry fleet, because you have the speed and you have the firepower. What this generally means is moving along flanks, engaging and poking at key objectives, and also harassing enemies that are already engaged with your front line. Just coming in from the side, dishing out a bunch of damage, and leaving before they can retaliate.
Yeah, it's actually just to jump in, I think it was Turbo Leszuksku. Sorry if I messed your name up there. Said basically a cap fleet. Vauxhalls very much fall into a weird archetype, just like our star was saying that cavalry, where if you are on the flanks and you're engaging over control points, and the only thing you're coming across is tugboats and shuttles, not only are you a cap fleet, you are the apex predator. You are killing anything that you come up against. Almost with impunity. You've got to be careful of getting too close for something like a torpedo tug or, competent rocket shuttle player will give you a really bad time. But you can sort of play around those edges and be very, very aggressive and take control of the caps and sort of force these little ships away. It's what the Vauxhall is very, very good at. The problem, and I guess the skill, which I'm sure Star's about to touch on, is when you come up against something bigger, especially like a multiple player frontline fleet of a lot of liners and Acellos. That's where Vauxhalls can get themselves into a lot of trouble, because you get so used to being aggressive and getting on that cap point and pushing everything else off, only to run into basically what is a brick wall.
More like a brick wall of spikes. Those things hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, they do hurt.
But yeah, CLs are very competent at killing light assets because of the reasons mentioned. So, another thing I want to mention about this hull, and this hull in particular, is that you cannot tank damage. I must repeat this. You cannot tank damage in this thing. You're a glass cannon. The armor is... I don't actually remember where it's listed, but the armor on the CL is not thick enough to bounce 450 high explosive rounds from the front, which means a 450 round from the coming in from the front, even if it strikes a shallow angle, will punch straight into the middle of your ship and explode, and do massive damage.
It's been nerfed to the point. I'll have to be corrected if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure 100mm HE now penetrates from certain angles from the front as well.
In theory, yes. If it hits directly at a 90-degree angle, I believe it has exactly the right amount of penetration.
Yeah, I don't even need it. Like, it used to be that. I don't think it needs to be exactly 90 anymore. Or is it, like, dead on the same penetration as the armor value?
I don't remember.
Let me check.
Yeah,
Either way, the Vauxhall can't tank. It gets pinned by everything.
250 REP goes to the front, 250 HE goes to the side, 450 kills you, plasma strips your armor, though thankfully plasma has a low muzzle velocity. I'll get more into that later.
Yeah, the Vauxhall's, I guess, motto is pretty much don't get hit.
Yes, you cannot take damage. Unlike Axfords, that can take damage and dish it out.
Yeah.
Now, I'm wondering if it's best to go on to how to build a Vauxhall or how to use one, because they kind of both tie into each other. Because a lot of stuff you bring ties into how you use it. Actually, first,
yeah, I guess we could talk about like the common archetypes you'll see, like people what they're running, and then run into fleet building considerations there. I think.
Maybe. Actually, first, do we have any questions so far? Before we continue.
Yeah, if you guys have got questions or things that you would that are sort of immediately jumping to your head, just pop it in the event stage chat. Just checking. So you've got the Vauxhall up there. What's its armor rating?
Let's see. The armor thickness is 26 centimeters.
Yeah, because it keeps going down. The Vauxhall armor keeps getting nerfed. Like every year, it loses another 2 centimeters. 100 millimeter HE pen is 30 centimeters, so you
Oh,
can penetrate at quite extreme angles actually. If it's only 20,
surprisingly extreme
26.
angles, and considering that
Yeah.
you
So
can almost always find a flat face from any direction. Yeah, even 100
yeah,
millimeter HE is a threat to you.
so 100 millimeter HE scares this thing as well, which is a pretty big deal.
All right, looks like we don't have any questions, so let's get on with typical scenarios they might encounter and the equipment to deal with that. Going up against shuttles for yeah, go ahead.
I was just seeing Bargain Bin Cryptid's message of this is why I like Axfords, and yes, you're exactly right
Yes.
there. I think the Axford and the Acello, which is sort of like the Axford adjacent for the OSP, they are some of the more forgiving fleet or ship hulls to start with because you can take a little bit of damage and you do still have the mobility to move around, and you got some guns that can hurt everything. The Vauxhall very much isn't that. I would actually almost be tempted to say the Vauxhall is the hardest hull to play. I don't know if I'm wrong there, but like a freak blob is very straightforward actually. Even though you got a lot of ships, you just have that one lead ship, and that's quite easy. Um, Torpedo sprinters or rocket shuttles, you can mess up here and there, but you're putting pressure on the caps, and you've got so many ships that it's all right. The beam destroyers, just get a good ambush, and you can do a heap of damage. Axfords and Solomons. I mean, the Solomon's pretty hard to play as well. I think that sort of would compete for hardest hull to play. But the Vauxhall very much is a ship, like you've been saying, Star. It can't take damage. So if you mess up with it, it just dies, and then you've got what would be probably at least a third of your fleet, probably more, is now in the bin.
Yeah.
Which is what makes this hull so, I think, polarizing. It's always coming up in balance discussion with people going, it's not strong enough. Especially after it's had sort of like a little moment of glory where it's been a little bit too overtuned and people are smashing with it. And it feels great, but then this sort of thing has to balance because it's so quick and it has such good DPS that if it can tank as well, it's almost like you can do everything with this ship. And you kind of still can, you just need to follow that rule of don't get hit.
And that leads us to our next thing. If you don't want to get hit, you can use jamming. You essentially have to follow the survivability onion. For those unfamiliar, the idea is don't get seen, don't get targeted, aka locked, don't get shot at, and then don't get hit. And then we're going to ignore everything past don't get hit because that kind of doesn't matter for CLs. So on the for don't get spotted part, jamming and... Oh, this is not the one with jamming. This is the one with jamming. Jamming is a very good tool to have on light cruisers. Because of the small angle from the front.
Potato. For anyone who's interested as well, sorry, Potato has posted the survivability onion in the event stage chat, and that is a great thing to be aware of if you like playing Vauxhalls.
Yes. As I was saying, the jammer is very good for denying your opponent a lock or a trap. However, keep in mind some considerations for the jammer. First of all, the Acello, I'm going to be talking about the Acello a lot. It is like the arch nemesis of a CL, has sensors that can overcome jamming quite well, with the combination of the parallax radar from ANS, and the floodlights from ANS, and the bullseye from ANS. Actually, now that I think about it, ANS carries probably the best equipment to deal with CLs. Funny how that works.
Yeah, which is why the Acello is so good at dealing with the Vauxhall, because it can carry all of the things that the Vauxhall gets detected by.
Yep. First of all, the floodlights, they increase your radar signature if you get illuminated by them, making your jamming less effective. The parallax has a very powerful burn through. When you do a burn through sweep with a parallax, it multiplies the output by 12 times, which is enough to cut through a lot of jamming. And then the bullseye can lock through jamming, supported by the floodlights. So the jamming cannot be relied upon as your only means of defense, but it's very potent against things like liners. Other things you also need to be considering is the existence of long-range tracking radars that can outrange jamming by 4 kilometers. Blanket jammers and bellbird jammers all have range of exactly 10,000 meters. I believe the LRT Bloodhound has a range of 14 kilometers. And finally, the dastardly EO Pike can simply ignore your jamming and just look at you and give a fire execution. So jamming isn't something you can reliably use to protect yourself, but it is a very useful tool in your arsenal that can allow you to single-handedly shoot your opponent without them shooting back under certain circumstances. The other part is the radar drive. What this does is that the radar drive buffs linear thrust, and for those who are unaware, that is your acceleration. That is how fast you slow down, speed up, make a turn around a corner, or make a bend around a corner. It doesn't affect your turn rate. That's what the Dragonfly drive does. But it affects how fast you can start and stop moving. And that greatly enhances your ability to outright avoid getting hit by dodging the shell. Moving on to the next drive, since I was just talking about the radar drive, our Whiplash drive. The reason I like the small Whiplash drive and the large radar drive is that the small Whiplash drive gives us plus 20% more speed. And well, for a ship that's fast, plus 20% more speed is a lot of speed. Having that speed is extremely valuable because it lets you reposition across the battlefield quickly. Other considerations about this whole, Mark 64s do a lot of damage. And what's better than damage? More damage. Ammunition elevators are something that you should never slack on in a CL. I personally recommend 4. TF Birch has 3 for various reasons, for example, fitting the Squire missile ID system. But personally, I like to run all 5 guns or ammunition elevators for maximum firepower. Of course, this comes at a cost. Because if you have 5 guns, you see this jammer up here. That jammer has nowhere to go except one of your point defense mounts. So there's that consideration. And finally, going into the internals. It's my opinion that CL internals, they don't matter as much as you'd think. Because if you get hit by 450 or any significant damaging weapon, you're kind of dead anyways. They just let you live for a little bit longer. Here, actually, let me just load up my own personal CL fleet. So I can show you how I like to build my... I need to clean up. Oh, I need to clean up so much of this. Alright. I like to put in the nose the reinforced magazine, a reinforced DC locker, and a reinforced CIC. Actually, I should probably explain why the center stack is empty. That might look very strange, but... Here, if you don't know this already, 450, or not just 450, any high explosive round has this stat called penetration depth. Or not penetration depth, I believe it's maximum penetration depth is the stat. Essentially, it's how far in the shell will reach into a ship after penetrating the armor before it detonates, dealing damage and spreading it out to everything caught in a blast radius. And from just solely my own just observations, dying like a lot of times in CLs, I have died so many times this whole. These 3 slots are always the first to die, and I think, and I'm like 60% sure, I can't say this is the case because I haven't done any rigorous testing, but I strongly suspect that 450 shells have exactly the pen depth to make it past just the front nose stack to detonate inside the center stack. So I don't put anything important there because that's where all the damage gets sent, basically. Instead, I move everything to the nose and to the rear. The rear 2 sections are the safest. I run a basic CIC as a backup to my reinforced CIC in front, and a large DC locker to keep 2 of my restores safe. And again, this is just how I build a CL. how you will build a CL is going to be different depending on your needs and wants. But
yeah. I think if I was to just immediately give my sort of opposite to that, you're exactly right on those 3 stacks in the middle of the ones that get shot the most. I generally don't leave them empty, but if I am putting stuff in there, I will always fill all 3. And the reason I'll fill all 3 is when you've got multiple modules next to each other, the damage of high explosive shells is spread evenly between them, which is especially important if you're using reinforced modules, because a reinforced module cannot die unless the damage threshold is broken in the one shot. So if you've got a lot of modules and compartments all close together with a high damage threshold, particularly with your lower caliber HE shells, when they pen your ship, they're going to detonate, and their damage is going to get distributed in a way where they're not actually dealing that damage threshold number anymore. It might be like you have a damage threshold of 40, and HG shell is detonated and its damage has been split into a bunch of, multiples of 34 or something, so, or not multiples of, but it's dealing 34 damage to everything. Which means your reinforced modules never break. And one of the reasons this sort of reinforced damage threshold is so important is because you've got a lot of modules that people can often forget. I'm sure there's people in here who already do this, but auxiliary steering, you can put 2 of them in your ship and they're only 10 points each. Not only does it let you keep control of your ship if you lose your CIC, but they are reinforced modules. So that inside your ship can be a really tanky part of your ship. I will often put something like a reinforced magazine, a reinforced DC locker, and an auxiliary steering as my 3 central parts of a Vauxhall, because I've got a bit of a restore. It's a big spot to put a magazine. I want my CIC and my large DC locker, just like you've got there, up the back in the Vauxhall. I'm not really entirely comfortable with having a magazine up in the front nose, but it is a good idea. Like I like what you've done here, Star. But having that reinforced mag, reinforced DC locker, and an auxiliary steering in the middle can make it quite tanky. So even though you're taking that damage in that core frame, it'll take a little bit for it to be grayed out.
Mm-hmm. I personally...
Yeah, you're exactly right there, Turbo. Auxiliary steering is useful as ablative armor.
Yes, auxiliary steering is useful as armor. Don't tell us I said that. Anyways, so personally,
it's actually a fun fact. Like all of the starting fleets that are in the game for new players to use, it is always a discussion between Liss and other developers with the people making those starter fleets, because they're actually community made. I don't know if you guys knew that. A lot of the permanent testers will make starter fleets or work with Liss on them. People will always try to sneak in like a tanky auxiliary steering, and Liss will slap it and go, no, get rid of that. Doesn't want it to be sort of gamified. But there's actually other things as well, like I think it's like the fire suppression system module and all that, they're reinforced too. So keep an eye out for that reinforced. Yeah, redundant reactor failsafes is only 10 points, and it's also a reinforced module. It's only got a damage threshold of 10. But,
I should also mention that some things don't have the reinforced tag, but still have an extremely high damage threshold. The Parallax radar,
like the radar,
is very well known for surviving everything and being the last thing in a ship to live, despite all odds.
It's not just that's right. The Parallax radar has 300 hit points and a damage threshold of 40. So you'll see people put their radar up the front where their ship's always getting shot, because the radar is actually really hard to kill. It's risky, but it can give you, some precious seconds if you are under fire that's hurting.
Also,
ammo elevators, meanwhile, just die.
Ammo elevators die wherever you put them, so you just kind of live with it. You just kind of live with it.
Yeah.
I always lose my ammo elevators and CLs. It's so sad. There goes my DPS. I should mention though, with the recent mag changes since the carrier update, magazines no longer supply ammunition when they are redded out. So that's one of the reasons I hesitate in putting the magazine in a center stack, is because while it will survive, it will end up being constantly redded out. And having no ammo is a guaranteed way to lose any fight.
I was actually going to say that and add it on, because my CL layout of having my reinforced magazine in the middle is an old build. It's how I've been building my Vauxhalls for a long time. I haven't actually played that much since that magazine change. And it is costing me dearly when my Vauxhalls come under fire. I'm actually looking at my Vauxhalls going, I might move them to that front slot like you have.
I think you should try it out.
Yeah, but that or run 2 magazines. It's a little bit expensive.
It's a little bit expensive.
Running the second magazine is, it's genuinely a good idea now. Especially on the Vauxhall.
Are anything else I should cover? Right. Point defense. Point defense is good.
Oh yeah.
But, in my opinion, point defense won't save you. Because they'll just send more missiles per salvo at you. What point defense does is force them to spend more per salvo on you, but in the end, the only defense you can really rely upon is soft kill. Which means you can mess up, but having a mix of both is good. Because the more point defense you have, the less salvos they'll have to throw at you, because each salvo has to be bigger to get through your PD. So because of that, I personally drop actually a decent amount of my PD. I drop I only use half of these for slots as point defense. The other half I put my miscellaneous electronic warfare equipment like bullseye, blankets, and on the other diagonal side, I put a VLS-1 and I put chaff in it because chaff is good. Though, the reason I have chaff on all 3 of these, because you only technically need chaff on 1 of these, is because I have had so many times where the chaff box gets shot out, or I just straight up lose the whole Vauxhall with the chaff box, and then I get missiled, and I'm just like, man, I really wish I had a chaff box right now.
Yeah, I mean, soft kill is always, I think it's the most important thing on any fleet, because if you come across a large volume of missiles, no amount of hard kill will defend you. Soft kill is the only way to go about it. What I would mention is, and I'll post this screenshot in the event stage chat. The front profile of the Vauxhall is so narrow that if you do dedicate those 4 wing platforms to hard kill, it is probably some of the most effective hard kill in the game. Those cursed Mark 62 Vauxhalls that I used to run with their really high RPF rate of fire. Another way they got nerfed is when Frig Blob 120 RPF was a problem. So they nerfed 120 RPF, which made it even more useless. But that 120 RPF combined with the Defender cross-section that I've just posted in event stage was a very, very hard level of hard kill to get through. If you're pointing your nose at something like a container volley coming in from a container liner, the Vauxhall will probably be the ship that shoots the most down. Even like things like a fully kitted out PD Solomon will struggle more than a Vauxhall with 4 defenders on its wings pointing its nose towards the threat. I think the only thing that really competes with it is an Axford. An Axford fully covered out in PD, I think, is just the best PD ship the ANS has to offer when it comes to hard kill.
I think actually the Vauxhall might beat it out, just because if it's coming in from the front, it only has like a narrow area to hit, which means that they're all going to end up like around the same area, and they're going to end up being pretty close to the defenders. And being close to 20 mil is a very good way to get your missiles killed. 20 mil has DPS of quite literally yes. I believe the numbers are something like I want to say like several torps per second of hard kill per defender.
Yeah, it's at the point where if the defender touches something, it dies. And because you've got this cross-section of defenders overlapping each other as missiles come in from the front, it hits a lot of missiles. Which is why it's so good. So I will often, with my Vauxhalls, try and put 3 defenders on, so I can have, you know, 1 utility mount. In that case, for my screenshot, I've got a blanket jammer on the underside, and the front top mounts are the ones with the best coverage. So you would generally want to put your PD guns there. I'm going to share another screenshot of another one of my Vauxhall layouts. This one's actually from the same fleet. But this one here has, and I'll get straight to that next potato, but this one here has got a blanket jammer and a fire control bullseye target lock. and then I've got the defenders staggered, one on the top, one on the bottom on the opposite side. It's not great hard kill, that's nowhere near as good as the 3, and then it's nowhere near as good... the 3 is still good, but it's not as good as having 4. But unfortunately the Vauxhall is limited on its mounts, and you don't really want to give up any guns. So that's sort of what you end up with. And these both here, their backpack is soft kill. I've brought Chaff with me because it is an essential part of the build. Just on what Potato's saying about what would you recommend with radars on CLs, it depends. If I'm running a twin Vauxhall build, and we might get into archetypes in a little bit, I'll let you lead the way, Star. But I will often run a spyglass on one of them if I've got a purely CL fleet. And that's because you want to be able to detect threats at really far ranges. The Vauxhall is a vehicle that needs to live by keeping a long-range engagement going. You want to sit at that 8-kilometer max range of your guns, and you want to see the threats coming in so you can engage them at that max range. So a spyglass is really important. Having 1 or 2 adaptive radar receivers on that spyglass can be great as well, but that starts getting into the way of the ammo elevators. So maybe run 1 or none at all if you're short on points. An adaptive radar receiver is a nice luxury. As for the other ones in the fleet, if it's a 2 Vauxhall build, I will probably put a parallax on the next one, but I won't only have the parallax as my only form of target lock. You want bullseye somewhere. The parallax, if you get jammed, will not get a target lock. That's something a lot of people don't realize, is the parallax is really vulnerable to jamming. So if you're using that as your only source of target lock, especially if you start getting hit and your radar panels start going down, you're never going to lock a target again. So having the parallax is nice, but you do want bullseye radars in there instead as well. What I've just done is I've actually shared a bunch of my OSP Clipper fleets and my ANS Vauxhall fleets in the community events page for people to have a go at. You'll notice with all of my Vauxhall fleets that I've either got sprinters escorting them. I don't have any other type of hull escorting them because they're too slow. If you try to bring a range with a Vauxhall fleet, the range will fall behind, or it will make the Vauxhall slow down, which is completely defeating the purpose of taking a Vauxhall. You are supposed to be fast, so I only escort them with sprinters. And you'll see that I've either got fire control radars on, like bullseyes on some of the side mounts of my Vauxhalls, or I have them on the sprinters that are escorting them. And those sprinters that are escorting them are almost exclusively jamming ships. They are covered in blanket jammers. Some of them I think have got Sarissas. I've got a few of them in there as extra point defense to really help with the killing missile threats. But you want, I've got SDMs as well, like anti-craft missiles. Those are really good to bring on the little escort sprinters. But they are there to jam, and they are there to get target locks for the Vauxhalls. And I will strip my radars out of those sprinters all the time to get the power for that. It's one of those things where it's like, you could put the radars on the sprinters and turn them off. You can always do that. But I find, points and internal modules are something you're always fighting with when you're building a Vauxhall fleet. And if both of your Vauxhalls are dead, your sprinters are pretty useless because they are entirely supportive ships. So breaking them off the formation if the Vauxhalls are dead and using them as blind cappers where you try to sneak around and cap points is really all you can do at that point. So I generally just take the radars off those sprinters so they can have, twin blanket jammers and a bullseye or something like that.
When it comes to the parallax radar specifically, as Javel mentioned, it has trouble keeping locks through jamming, but not just through jamming.
Yeah.
The parallax locking capability is known to be unreliable at best against almost anything that's not a liner. And remember, a liner has the same signature or a similar signature as a chaff decoy. That's what it takes for it to be reliable. As Javel mentioned, we could go on to archetypes, or we could also show how dodging works.
Yeah, I'm happy to show how dodging works if you'd like to do that.
I think let's get into I'll go ahead and host the lobby.
Yeah, and I'll join you so we can
Yep.
Return.
Password is 1234, by the way.
Alrighty.
Anyone else that happens to have their game up, you're free to join us in Spectator if you want to watch from a different point of view.
Absolutely. And I was going to say as well, I mean, archetypes are pretty straightforward for voxels, and I think that I really wanted to comment on someone earlier on. I can't remember who it was, but they said they had like an Axford, a Vauxhall, and a Destroyer fleet or something like that. And I have personally found I've got maybe one fleet that I like where I've got a single Vauxhall by itself, and that's a Vauxhall with a bunch of beam destroyers. I find that the Vauxhall only really works when you go all in on it. If you're building a Vauxhall fleet, it is 3,000 points dedicated to making the Vauxhall work. Either being 2 Vauxhalls with a bunch of like escorting ships, or 3 Vauxhalls in itself. I think you can make it work if you're not playing like a dedicated Vauxhall fleet, but especially for someone starting off with using a Vauxhall, it requires a mindset that you dedicate yourself to playing them. And if you're distracted with playing frontline with other ships that are sort of mixed into the fleet, I don't know, I feel like you can make errors with the Vauxhall that get it killed.
Very easy.
Yeah, like the CL-CH combo is one I've tried to make work again and again, and I find I always use my CLs better if I'm just playing a CL fleet. It's your main, yeah, wow. So, I mean, that's
CLs,
probably a personal preference on my end.
I mean, the biggest thing about CLs is that you need to have your attention on the CL, like, at a lot of the time, because if you aren't paying attention and you're getting shot, like, you just kind of die. You crumple and fold in moments.
Now, did you want me to bring, like, obelisk liners, 250 liners, Acellos? What did you want me to bring?
Oh, go ahead and take Kynite. Go ahead and take Kynite. We can also show off pikes and LRTs.
Right. Oh yeah, because that's got the support ships in. Cool. I am ready.
Alright, let's get started. Actually, last call for anyone that wants to spectate from the lobby. Password is 1234. Alright, let's get started.
Yeah, let's go.
Oh, and Javo, it might be best to share your screen too.
Yeah, sure. I can do that.
This way, for the people who aren't in Spectator, they can also see how it looks from your end.
Yeah. Just go straight for point E in the middle.
Yep.
Now, when we move central, do you want me, once I've spotted you, to start engaging, or are you, do you want to talk first before I start blasting?
Let's talk first.
Alright. I'll refrain from violence.
Aye, full burn. Force laid
Oh yeah, some notes about controlling voxels. Never use relative formation. Be on loose formation. Try to be on loose formation whenever. You can switch back to true formation if you need your ships to catch up. But be on loose formation because it keeps your speed up and lets you keep dodging. Being on true formation means that your formation lead will wait for the ships to catch up, which can really get in the way of trying to dodge shells when they slow down and, well, get hit. The other part that's also important about controlling light cruisers is the hold heading command. Setting your heading towards the direction of expected enemy is incredibly important, because otherwise you'll be side on with a massive profile.
It is mandatory, like, you need to, it's the first thing you do when you deploy. When your voxels are down, set your heading to the direction where the enemy might be coming from.
full burn.
Otherwise you'll forget.
It's such muscle memory by now that, like, as soon as I load in, the first command is I press H and then I click on the opposite side of the map.
Breaking burn.
Also, on a CL, your biggest asset is speed, so stay on flank speed unless if you're intentionally trying to go slow. There's no reason ever not to be on flank speed, even if you burn your thrusters a bit.
If you've got the damage control to sustain flank speed, there's never a reason to break off flank speed.
Unless
the only thing that can get a little bit touchy is if you're running a Raider drive with light DC in particular, and you got to watch that. that damage can stack up pretty quick.
Thankfully, Whiplash Drive nowadays have the minus, what's 20% to
Yeah, it's
Blank
big.
damage.
It's really good. Yeah, which is why the Whiplash plus Raider is so good, because you get that linear thrust, and you've got the flank damage reduction, and the top speed increase. They are basically made for each other. And a build consideration for people, I don't know if everyone here is aware, a lot of people are. The smaller Whiplash has a better top speed modifier than the large Whiplash. So when you're double driving a Vauxhall, the small drive is almost always the Whiplash for the best top speed you can get. And then the larger one is always going to be the Raider drive, or some people sometimes take a Dragonfly instead to taste. I personally used to do Dragonfly small Whiplash all the time. I've since changed to Raider because I think the linear thrust is very important, especially when you're trying to change direction quickly after walking into an ambush or something like that.
I've had a friend.
But
I've had a friend who just straight up just told me one day. So hey, look, I took TF Birch, right, and I gave it double Prowler drives and gave it more jamming, and I'm just like, you did what?
On it.
yeah, double Prowler drives.
It's a
Nothing
choice you-
scarier than the quadruple Prowler drive Solomon that cannot move. It is a space station.
All right,
Going speed.
looks like we got our first track. So
Okay, so you can see me before I can see you. That's yep, you're seeing me.
Yep.
Wow.
Attempting
So I need to turn my.
oh, I see you have a
bloodhound
pike up
on.
already. Oh, I'm gonna set my PD to
I
deady
do
so it
have a
doesn't
pipe
shoot it.
flying around. Yeah.
All right. So you might have, if you're watching my stream, you might notice something. I could only see that pike by executing a burn through sweep. Pikes are very small. They are very hard to see. So if you are being tracked and you, especially just if it's just one ship and you don't know why, it's always worth doing a burn through sweep, or just in general if you're being tracked.
Yeah.
All right. With that
Yeah,
out
burn
of the
through
way,
sweeps very rarely damage you. I was going to say as well, this is where that adaptive radar receiver really helps the Spyglass Vauxhall with spotting things. I should also mention, if you are only running one Vauxhall, do not give it a Spyglass.
give it a parallax.
It is one of those, it's actually a pretty poor radar. You want a frontline or a parallax first. Spyglass is like an extra add-on.
I wouldn't
the
even
extra
take the
range and
front line
spotting is
first.
really
I would
nice.
take the parallax first, like, no, every time.
Parallax first all the time. Yeah, definitely.
Alright, something I'd like to also mention is, when you start an engagement with enemy units, you don't know what these are. I personally like always starting with HERPF, I'm opening fire by the way, for one reason. And this is a bit of a cheese strat, but like, when you see the RPF land on a target, you can kind of see, hey, that's kind of big. Like, really long and flat.
Yeah.
That looks
I
like a
wonder what
liner.
that is.
I wonder what that could be. That looks like a
It's
liner.
clearly a shuttle. Yeah.
And with that, you can switch
Liners
over.
are super easy to spot. Yeah, because they go broadside, so you can see that giant profile. You're actually breaking something. One of my ammo elevators, surprise, surprise.
God? I know we
It's-
talked
it's
about
been
them being
damaged to
fragile, but that much?
79%.
From that?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. Alright,
Aye, aye.
so once you've identified the threat, you can take corresponding action. Now, for 450s in particular, go ahead and start opening fire.
Roger. I'm going to fire on the center track. Oh, they've got AP loaded, which is, I guess, actually, AP for the front of a Vauxhall is not a bad idea.
No, but, the
450
armor
HE is
piercing
better,
will.
but
The armor piercing round will
yeah.
usually reach inside and hit something deeper in rather than just blow up in the center stack.
Fire.
Oh, no, you already shoot. Okay. I was like, where's the
Oh,
bullet?
yeah, sorry.
And then I forgot.
Yeah, I have open fire.
Yep. This
I mean,
is a
that's a great
this is a
example
great
of,
demonstration of why you don't want to take damage. You die
Vauxhall
easily.
cannot take. Yeah.
I'm just gonna leave this one here so we can see how quickly this dies under fire. I'm gonna split the formation too.
Component destroyed.
Since I have 3 lives, I can show it off, right?
Set your traffic.
Yeah.
Component disabled.
Waiting for your orders, Commander.
One thing to note here, though, that I am struggling with this particular fleet build,
Aye, aye.
the OSP fire control radar has a max range of 6.5 kilometers, the little pinpoint. So if you're sitting at 8 kilometers with a Vauxhall at max range, it is very likely that the OSP player you're playing against has no chance of target locking you. which gives you a better chance at dodging. Like, not only is there the longer range where you've got more time for the shells to get over to you, so doing some orbit dodging or moving around is going to make you harder to hit. Even just having your ship on evasive is going to make it harder to hit. But the only thing I've got that's giving me a decent radar track here is the Bloodhound radar on my tugboat. And it is not good enough, really, if the Vauxhall was moving. Even if that one's stationary, right? You
Yep.
can see I'm still missing. That's how narrow the profile is for a Vauxhall.
Though the
but
few
now,
shots
when
that
those
do
HE
land,
shells do hit,
they bite.
yeah, ouch.
They bite.
They hurt.
Standing by.
You don't really have a choice to take damage. Oh, and also I should mention, this thruster right here, the big one in front,
Offline.
this thing gets grayed out very easily, and when that thing goes, that's half of your thrust going backwards. So
It's
that
one of those things where, even though the Vauxhall like front on is hard to hit, if you get hit, that thruster 17 dies every single time, and then you've lost half of your reversing thrust, so you can't get out of danger anymore. So even though you've only got a few things that can get hit from the front, if you do get hit, you can't get out of there anymore.
it's not very good getting hit there. All right,
No.
shall we start the actual dodging this time without me
Yeah,
skissuing
that-
that?
Component destroyed.
All right, switch your fire to one of the ones up top. Just let me know if it's one to the left or to right from your perspective.
Component disabled.
It'll be your left. I'm gonna swap to my track
Alright.
3045.
So there's a couple ways that you can execute an evasive maneuver. The simplest and most hands-free option is the orbit maneuver. Somehow the center Vauxhall has still one gun. Yep. Somehow I'm actually
Am I
impressed to
supposed-
survive
by the
that.
way, yeah, I am supposed to start shooting. Alright, cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I should mention, you don't want to get crossfired. It's very much not good.
Module on
Yeah,
Orbit
even
dot-
this slight...
Even the slight angle is
on the
doing a
side,
lot,
Yeah,
too.
is allowing me to hit you.
Just barely.
And that's... Because what's the range here? This is 7,400. So if he backed off like another 400 meters to get to about 7,800, it would help a lot. And you definitely don't want to be within 7.2. This is one of those things, if you want like a solid number in your head for a Vauxhall, engage at 8 kilometers to a minimum range of 7.2 kilometers.
Yep.
If you get within 7.2 kilometers, that's when OSP 100mm can start shooting. And if you run into something like an obelisk liner that is covered in 100mm turrets, you are going to die.
Now, one of the reasons I don't like using orbit commands is Javel right now could just straight up charge me and just kill me. Because the orbit commands keeps me in place.
Yeah,
Instead,
big time.
Instead, it is much better to use move commands or heading command, or drive course commands. However, this requires significantly more APM, as what you have to do is essentially accelerate in one direction and make adjustments over time while backing away, like so. Here, cancel the fire order on the other liner, the one that isn't shooting right now.
Heading there now, Commander.
Yeah, that one, ceasefire. Oh, the other one's already started to shoot.
Uh,
I've cancelled No Other Way.
To that position.
oh boy.
Do you want me to cancel that one as well?
Just keep that one shooting. Keep that one shooting specifically. Ow, ow, ow,
These
ow,
things
ow,
reload
ow,
pretty
ow, 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 ow.
Component destroyed.
I mean, this is a great example of like you.
Ow, ow, ow,
this is
ow.
where you're talking about you need that more APM because you need to be changing the angle quite often. I did like when you started moving backwards, you made like a 45-degree angle change because it lets you keep that momentum your ship's already got. If you do like a direct 180-degree
Now, Command.
course change move, your ship has to stop and then start accelerating in that way, and that can make you quite vulnerable. So changing direction at most 90-degree angles is a really good way. 90 degrees is actually perfect because your ship starts thrusting down to get down into that new direction while still keeping its sideways momentum, which makes you pretty hard to hit.
Also another consideration is, in terms of controlling your CLs, is don't be afraid to restore thrusters. These are quite literally your life.
We're on our way.
If you don't have a thruster,
Yeah.
you die. It's
Just don't
just
restore thruster 17, there's no point.
No, if anything, I'd argue that Thorson 17 is the one you need to restore the most. It's just that you'll
all
end
your
up burning
restores
more
plus
than
two,
like you'll end up burning quite a few restores on
I
it.
did some damage.
Yeah, and yeah, so this is where Turbo has brought up the point of every liner carries an EO pike these days. You are exactly right. A lot of people are running the EO targeting pike, which is why the pike's been so controversial. Without the pike, the OSP have no way of target locking a Vauxhall unless you've got an Ocello with a bullseye radar. That's why an Ocello is the Vauxhall's biggest threat, because it can see you and it can lock you.
Well, the other part
EO
is
pikes are a
258.
really big problem.
The other part is 250
Oh, sorry.
AP does like nothing to the Cello's nose. You basically can't kill that thing without help.
Yes, the Ocello nose on is your hard counter, pretty much. Monitors are also annoying because they're very heavily armored and you have to use AP. They take a while to kill, but the Ocello is your biggest threat. So this EO pike, which I've now started using, is making this track insanely good. I'm going to struggle to miss now. You'll also notice it doesn't really matter what Star does here with the Vauxhall, because it's already damaged enough to its thrusters aren't thrusting anymore. After getting hit, he's now going to keep getting hit because he's lost all his maneuverability. This is why Vauxhalls are punishing. A healthy Vauxhall is very hard to hit initially, but once they do start getting slapped, they become very vulnerable.
Another thing to consider.
The EO pike.
Go ahead.
Another thing to consider about dodging is that, of course, the closer you are, the bigger maneuvers you'll have to make to dodge. Which also means that when you're closer in and your opponent's charging you, it means that you can't back away as fast because you need to direct more of your thrusting power to dodging. Which also means that they get to close distance even more. And it becomes a very nasty loop of they're getting to you faster and faster. And you're not backing away faster.
Which is why the whole moving backwards at like a 45-degree angle is the most common maneuver a Vauxhall will be taking, exactly like that, if you're playing against an enemy frontline fleet. Ultimately, the Vauxhall never really wants to end up in this position in the first place. Like, if you are trading shots with a set of bulk liners, there's only so much you can do with your dodging. Jamming here is pretty much your first line of defense. You always want to have blanket jammers when you're using Vauxhalls. But the pike consideration that was brought up, every single one of my Vauxhall fleets, I think apart from my triple Vauxhall fleet, I'll have to double check that, every single one of them brings some form of SDM, or some form of Sarissa, or some kind of long-range PD that can help. I mean, a Sarissa's dodgy at best with hitting a pike, but you want to be bringing anti-craft missiles, because pikes are a very big problem. And you can get a really good anti-craft missile at something like 4 points, but you need to be bringing something that shoots down squadrons. Especially because a Vauxhall is so quick, and you get around the flanks often. If there's one thing carrier players like going for, it's ships out on the flank by themselves. So make sure you've got something that helps you deal with craft. Very, very important, I think.
I would say, personally, what I do is I bring anti-pike SDM2s, specifically, just to get rid of pikes, up to 5 of them. Because, I can't do anything about pikes. If I get piked, I can't break that track. Unless if I'd, somehow bait the pike to, slam into a wall and stop looking at me for a moment, I'm not breaking track. It's not happening.
Yeah.
We're on the way, Commander.
And that's, again, where that adaptive radar receiver spyglass can really help with you noticing a pike.
I've actually, I've ran it through the radar calculator. The adaptive radar spyglass cannot see the pike.
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
How many do you need, or is it just
It doesn't work.
at all,
It just doesn't work at all.
Well, don't listen to me then. All right.
The parallax burn through is the only thing that's
Parallax
been
burn through is
consistent.
very
in looking
strong.
through.
Yeah. Yeah, you
It's
always want to be
it's
burning
insane
through.
how hard it is to see a pike sometimes. Especially because of crafting MCON now, which gives them a 25% reduction to your signature size.
We're on the way, Commander.
Okay. Well, the saving grace for you here is my pike ran out of fuel, so it's got to go land.
Alright.
Ready whenever you
See what else? Anything else I want to cover while we're here? Right. I would like to show off the DPS of CLs, but I realize that we are kind of beyond the point where I can show that off. considering.
I've damaged you too much.
Yes.
Do you have one that's still undamaged, or did I hit?
I do have one
you
that's
got
undamaged.
still undamaged.
I have one that's undamaged.
All right.
This doesn't have a lock, which is unfortunate.
What's the name of that one? The edge
Edge
of
of defeat.
Okay, I'll mark the other two as kill.
So yeah.
So
if
would you like me to start firing at that one to demonstrate the dodging?
I suppose. Might as well spend the last life. I could always use more practice, considering that I completely failed to dodge the previous one.
Yeah, alright, so I'm gonna fire at you with just one of them. Final orders. It's gonna open up.
We're on the way, Commander.
That 250 is starting to hurt me.
Jamming the enemy. Hostile fire inbound. Underway.
Yeah, nice dodging.
And then normally, if this was an
So you've
actual
got-
engagement, Javel would probably be charging me right now. Trying to close that distance
Yeah, I
and
would be
prevent me
be
from dodging.
trying to push forward to get as close as possible. Be as aggressive as you can to deal with Vauxhalls.
Aye, aye. On the way.
And the only reason I've got you spotted still is that offset Bloodhound. That's
Yeah.
that's helping here.
Aye, aye. We're on the
I should also mention that if you do end up within 6 kilometers of a line ship, things get bad very, very quickly, because not just because they start hitting, but also because the pinpoint is practically invulnerable to jam.
Yeah, the pinpoint is really, really
So
good
once
at
they
keeping
get-
its target lock.
So once you get locked within like 6 kilometers or so, you're not shaking that lock. You need to back off. And,
Yeah.
well, it becomes quite difficult to back off.
underway.
Some things that can also help is that, let's say, a liner, right? They have an autoloader. That means they fire a bunch of shells, then reload for a duration. During that reload, it's a perfect time to pull straight backwards. After all, they can't shoot when they're reloading.
Can't do it. It's too far.
As you can see here, because the Vauxhall is still healthy and Star is changing the course of that ship,
That's too far.
very few of the 450 shells are hitting. You're still getting 1 or 2 hits. You're never going to be completely impervious. But because you're on top of that maneuvering, the ship is surviving a lot better. You just don't want to get hit in the first place. But taking this engagement's still a bad thing as well. You really don't want to be engaging liners.
Take,
You can
take liner
harass
engagements
them.
that are already busy engaging your front line, so they can't turn and shoot you.
Exactly, yeah.
And if they turn and shoot you, just
are-
run. Get out of there.
Yeah.
Because if they turn
You
and shoot
described
you,
it perfectly.
they're not going to be shooting your
Um,
allies, which means that you've done your job.
Yeah, the Vauxhall's a cavalry unit. It is very vulnerable, but very quick, and it can do a lot of damage. It is a glass cannon. If you engage a liner fleet that is already distracted with your Vauxhall sort of heavyweight support, so someone playing an Axford fleet, someone playing a Solomon fleet, even if it's something like a Reigns blob, I think that's always been the argument for why take a Vauxhall when you can take a Reigns blob. In particular, like you can take 2 groups of Reigns and be at 2 parts of the maps at the same time. Reigns are harder to see. They can be harder to hit a lot of the time. They're just slower. The Reigns can't get to places where the Vauxhall can as quick. If something is distracting the liners and they are shooting something else, you can move in, and especially if you're running a triple CL build with all 250s, the damage you deal can stack up very, very quickly. A tactic that you don't see often, because we all play public lobbies just with random teammates, if you have just a bunch of Vauxhalls, so you've got all 4 players or all 5 players playing Vauxhall fleets, and you Wolfpack, you go as a big blob, that's where you can sort of just forget about this whole dodging thing, and you can be super aggressive, because having what? If you've got 4 players on 3 Vauxhalls, and what's that, 12? Yeah, 12 Vauxhalls. The amount of DPS that you have coming out of those 250 guns is so high that the first liner you come across will die immediately, and the next, and the next, and you just keep rolling through like a snowball on top of the OSP fleet.
I mean, you can see right now how much
Vauxhalls-
damage I've done to Javel. I assume it's...
Yeah, if I click on my ship,
This is from a single
This is
CL.
a single Vauxhall. Yeah, a single CL is hurting me here. I've lost a magazine bulk. I've got orange on a few components. If it was 3 Vauxhalls firing at me, I would probably be critically damaged right now. And you can see that because he's dodging properly, I have not damaged him much at all. So it's not that Vauxhalls can't engage liners. You can. It is just a very high-risk thing to do. If you are dealing with a liner that's distracted and firing at something already, it will melt before it realizes. That's where a Vauxhall is strong. It's not a frontline ship, it is a second-line cavalry unit that gets into positions to support the team push or watch the flanks from enemy cappers. Dealing with tugboats and shuttles is this thing's specialty.
Also,
Providing
Javo,
fire support
start
on liners
start
is great as
charging
well.
me.
Yes.
Start charging me.
Start charging you?
Yep.
Can I fire my 100s as well?
Yes. Do everything you can to
Come
kill
here.
me. I'll probably
Alright.
end up dying and by making a mistake somewhere, but like in this situation right here, I can see that Javel's closing distance with the increasing relative velocity icon right there, the -17. Well, it's probably saying -20 by now. And by that, so seeing that, I know I need to start backing away. I see that Javel's autoloader has been expended. There are no more autoloader for the 450s have been expended. There's no more incoming 450 rounds. I choose to take the
My 100s
120.
started to shoot.
I choose to take 120s, right? Hope that I don't die tanking them, to get as much distance as possible by pulling back in a straight line and waiting for the next autoloader salvo. As soon as that autoloader fire, the next 450s fire, I immediately will execute the next dodge. And this gives me more distance than if I kept dodging.
Yeah. And sometimes I find moving backwards at a 45-degree angle works better because thruster 17 is already dead. So you can use some of your sideways thrust as opposed to just your rear going. You'll notice here, by the way, as well, I've closed to what? I'm at 6.4 kilometers. I've now got my pinpoint lock, and the Vauxhall's already melting.
I don't have my radar anymore.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what Star does here in terms of dodging. I closed 1 kilometer and he's dead. That's how quickly Vauxhalls melt. If a liner is looking at you, especially a lot of liners can be quite quick, especially if they've got a long haul drive. Yeah, you've got that like 800 meters of relative safety, and then you just die. It's why Vauxhalls are so hard to play. Once you get the knack of it, they are immensely fun, but don't engage targets that aren't distracted, and a lot of that can come down to fleet composition. If you're in a fleet that doesn't really have any frontline heavies, it's one of the reasons the railgun Solomon does not exist anymore, because it is so fundamental to the rest of an ANS team composition to have those heavies up the front, being the anchors they're supposed to be.
Come on, Java, you
so
don't have to throw
Vauxhalls
shade on
really shine.
Balcon.
Yeah, I'll look.
Still here.
Alright.
Still here.
I think that's about it. If I want to cover
Yeah,
the
that's about it
archetypes, I could go through the archetypes very quickly.
Yeah, the
Here.
archetypes are pretty straightforward.
They're pretty straightforward. I'll just show an example of each one. You have the Tri-CL, which I've shown all through this course, or through all my demonstrations. You have 3 CLs with guns, for maximum gun-based firepower. These are notably weak against the Cellos that carry 450s, which hurt, and can still lock you through your jamming, and are practically immune from the front from your guns. I hate the Cellos. Then you have the 2 CL fleets, which get interesting because you're only paying 1,000 for each CL, which means that you can afford backpack missiles. And these get very fun. These are the ones I use. These are what a lot of people call Acello killers. And these are specially tuned missiles with the right penades to punch straight through their auras and immediately gut an Acello. And I have enough
I think
salvos
I've
for
got exactly the same build, and I've called mine Kinetic Surprise.
That's a great name.
Yeah, that's the name of my fleet.
But yeah, Acello killers are very dangerous to Acellos, and that's a good thing, because they're your nemesis. And we have this jam vet, with active decoys and interrupt jammer. Nowadays, I think with carriers, having the interrupt is mandatory, because they can dump command munitions on you from just around the corner, if you're not careful. So I think the interrupt is very good to have.
Yeah, that's something I've neglected. I don't really have interrupt jammers on any of my Vauxhall fleets, and I'm definitely feeling that. The consequences are stacking.
Especially now with R3's nerfed torps, you see a lot more nowadays too. I know that we
Yeah.
don't have a full light on this for self-illumination or counter-jamming or anti-jam, but like, let's consider
Well,
it a
that's where your
product.
voxel mount. That's your voxel mount pressure.
Yep, and let's call
You
it
don't have enough
a
houses.
product of greed, of just pure greed. All right. There are some other more exotic CL archetypes up there. Ignore some of those names.
If people are still watching my stream, if you want exotic, here's the quad voxel mixed Mark 61, Mark 64 build.
Here's an example of a CL half cap, though this one's heavily cringed, which means that a lot of things are underpaid. There is no damage control central in here, and it doesn't have a reinforced DC locker, it's a small instead. However, it gets 4 cappers, which are just pure army missile cappers, and a single gun capper. Oh, and a beamstone, for good measure. The beamstone is also heavily underinvested. But it is possible to make a cap fleet with a 2 CL fleet. I don't exactly recommend this if you're going to run this as your first CL fleet, because it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ships, all of which require a decent amount of APM. It is very easy to lose ships in this fleet. Or just throw them on
Yeah, I've
caps,
got a-
look away, come back, and you're dead.
I've got an atypical fleet with a Mark 62 voxel because I can't get enough of that. And 3 beam destroyers and a jamming sprinter that sort of helps the destroyers. I don't really play this fleet very much anymore. I find beam destroyers are better flying by themselves as goalkeepers.
Yeah.
This is a very old build of mine, but I have had fun with this. And the basic, I guess, logic here is the beam destroyers deal with everything else, and the voxel protects them from little ships. Can sort of fly around, move forward a little bit to cap a point if it's safe. And the beam destroyers are there to deal with the cellos, line ships, lay ambush. Voxel just protects them.
And
It's actually, you know what? I know we said we're not going to talk about missile fleets, but I do want to very quickly look at this little one here. It's not the best fleet in the world. It's definitely sort of like missile spamming voxel thing. I've got 2 of them. But Mark 61s are very cheap. Just putting a couple on these ships, you can actually still goalkeep up the back, like a single tugboat or sprinter going around to try
That's-
cap. If you've got a couple of Mark 61s, you can hold the point. It's quite nice.
I think you can do more than hold the point. You can just massacre them.
Yeah, it's nice. And then you've got all your cruise guide missiles as well. Although these missiles are again old. A lot of these templates that I've got, because I haven't played this fleet in a while, I haven't upgraded them or updated them since. This is back when Wake validation was pretty much undodgeable. So, all you needed was
Right?
Wake,
It's still
and,
really good. It's still really good.
It's still really good, yeah, but it's nowhere near as ridiculous as it used to be.
Wasn't Old Wake Val kind of similar to current Therm Val? It was all aspect,
yeah, it
right?
is. Yeah, it was 360 degrees. But you know, you could hit anything. It didn't matter what their thermal
True.
value was.
Alright, as a closing statement,
Yeah.
Celos are your biggest enemy,
Missile away, tube clear.
so you should totally run TCL so you can just delete them.
Yeah. The HEKP missile on a voxel is awesome. I've actually got a fleet where I use my backpack size 3 launcher for torpedoes, and that is great fun because people always expect your voxels to be wanting to keep their range, and you get that liner that gets really aggressive and it pushes into you and it gets really close. That Acello is now dead. Great shot star. But like, you know, these liners push up into torpedo range because they want to rush you down, they want to get close, and they eat a face full of torpedoes, you just one-shot them. It is great fun to run that one. That's my Cloaking Twins build. I've shared that one.
Cloaking Twin.
But having backup torps is great.
That's quite an atypical choice, but I can see it working.
It is an atypical choice. The hybrid kinetic penetrators that you've got are the main one.
These are
The only
like,
problem with them is they're so expensive.
yeah, these are, one salvo of these is like 300 points.
Yeah, big time. But that's going to kill the other one, and that's 2 Acello's dead. which is why you take them. It's a really good build to have on them. That does nowhere near as much damage to the side of a liner. They're really only there dedicated to killer Cellos, or if you get the nose of a liner, they will work.
I mean, in a pinch, definitely shoot them in a liner if you're losing. Take them down with you.
Yeah, if you're losing, yeah, shoot them. Yeah, you want every advantage you can get. But I like my Cloaking Twins build compared to my Kinetic Surprise build. You have put so many points into those missiles that I've lost an entire sprinter. And I think that's the... If anyone was going, why take double CL or why take triple CL? The differences are double CL can take missiles, be the size 3 hybrids or the torpedoes if you do my atypical choice. And you also have generally better jamming support from the sprinters that are following. You can get better electronic warfare out of a double CL build than a triple one, because the triple one is so, I think, pressed for points and mounts that it can be hard to get everything you want. But a triple CL deals more gun damage. You got, 50% more DPS.
More gun.
You've also got an extra Vauxhall if you mess up. If one of the Vauxhalls dies, now you're down to 2. That's pretty much the difference.
Yep.
More DPS, more redundancy with triple. The double one is harder to hit in the first place, and you can take missiles.
Yeah.
You got more points for stuff to support you.
Well, I would have liked to cover stuff like positioning, but that's kind of too complicated, and we're also out of time. We've been at this for an hour and 15 minutes, so... I think that's all the basics.
I can pretty much summarize in a sentence. It's be in a position to quickly support your front line if your front line engages and you can hit stuff that's distracted. That's number one. And number two is watch the control points. This game is ultimately about objectives. Vauxhalls can react very quickly to things getting around the flank. If you are a reactive player that deals with threats emerging, you can always keep the backline secure. Kill shuttles that are flanking to cap, especially as the game gets late. You can sometimes split your Vauxhalls up and goal keep with each of them. But the one thing that I think I find Vauxhalls dying to all the time is because they are a really good reactive ship. But if your team's sort of deployment it's resulted in a thing where your front line's going one way, but you've got no front line on the other side, and the enemy is pushing very quickly through that. Unfortunately, the Vauxhall can't hold that front. If you move very quickly, you will be the first one there to engage, and then you're in front of, the OSP snowball that is pushing around the other flank, and you will die first. Sometimes I think the biggest thing with the Vauxhall is to make sure that you aren't the one engaging first against a big death ball. You have to restrain yourself and hold back a little bit for the rest of your team to respond.
Sometimes it's better to ignore the death ball entirely. Because if you ignore the death ball entirely, you can move around the flank and take one of their control points. Because one of the really nice things is that you don't... If you're more of a proactive player, you can poke control points by quickly pushing up to them, killing the capper on it, and especially if you coordinate with your cap player, you can have your cap player throw on a capper, cap it for you so you're not risking your CLs, and then back away the moment they rotate frontline to deal with it. Because the moment they rotate frontline to deal with it is the moment they take frontline off your frontline.
Yeah, if you just don't follow the death ball, generally speaking, your ships are faster. You can take the control points before the OSP does. This is an objective game. Keep your Vauxhalls healthy and quick and moving around the flanks. Cavalry unit.
Biggest thing when learning CLs is die a lot. That's all I can really say though. you just gotta die a lot.
I used to be wild with my my triple CL builds where very early on in the OSP where people were still figuring them out, I would just rush all three of them onto the middle control point and pillars. Because they could get there really quick. And you sort of didn't get punished because the OSP was still figuring out their liner headings, and you'd take the control point, bully any shuttle that tried to take it, then you could get out of there. Do not try that now, it does not work.
You will die. You will be shot by one. The entire enemy team will fire at you, and you do die.
But yeah, again, so cavalry unit on the edge, supporting your team. Do not engage first, especially if it's a death ball. Ignore the death balls. And if you are a death ball yourself, you've got a friend in voxels, or a random's taken them and you stick with them. A voxel wolf pack is terrifying. It is very, very strong, and generally the reason why voxels keep getting nerfed is a voxel wolf pack thing happens again. List notices it and goes, "Oh my god, these are too strong." It's like keep an eye out for friendly players playing voxels with you, because if you team up with them, you can be a real wrecking house.